left, depending on what device you're using, if you look towards your left at the bottom corner, there's a microphone that you can actually mute. I'm gonna ask that everybody, unless you're speaking, please mute your computer so that everybody can have an opportunity to talk. I don't want anybody talking over each other because the importance of hearing everybody's opinion is vital in this situation. That's the only way this is gonna work. Obviously, please, let's be respectful. Let's be respectful of both sides. And the most important thing is I don't want any of us to hold back our opinions, our feelings on any of these matters. We're here as a family, no matter what the creed is, no matter what the color is, we're here as a family. And if you're here, what you've done is you've taken the first step of letting me know that you actually are here for change, that you really want to understand. And I appreciate you guys for that. On my end, what I'm gonna do is, just so everybody can have an opportunity to speak on the situation, I'm gonna actually give everybody at least 2 minutes to really voice their opinions on the topic that's on hand. And we're going back and forth. We'll try to figure out if there's any rebuttals, but I'm gonna follow my screen. So I'm gonna indicate to everyone here that I see on my screen. So on my screen, I'm seeing Rebecca. She's the first one. And then it would go to Steve, and then it would go to Sister Rita, then it would go to Espia, then it would be Janae, then it would be PJ, and then it would be Drew for Center of Creative Education, and myself. So I'm gonna try to do my best to moderate this as much as possible. I think everybody here knows how I feel, so I'm gonna speak the least. I really want everybody to have an opportunity to speak their mind and really to walk away from this feeling like there's some type of understanding. All right, we're not going to do this in one shot, I'm sure, but if you guys are open to it, we can definitely do this multiple times so we can get down to the topic at hand. Okay, so the topic that the question that I have for us is, what issues regarding race do we feel most disconnected with? Okay, so what topics, what issues regarding race that we feel that we're most disconnected with when it comes to black and white? And I'll elaborate, and then Rebecca, I'll let you jump on. Okay, what the frustration sometimes that I have is speaking to, you know, our white counterparts or our white brothers and sisters who just, it almost seems like they refuse to even take a step back and see things from the black perspective and try to understand where we're coming from the black perspective and what might be offensive and so on and so forth. In my opinion, it feels that there's a clear understanding when it comes to other groups of people that X is offensive, so please don't do it. But it feels like there's certain conversations that I'm having, and unfortunately, none of them are here on this call, and I did invite them, just to let you know. But it almost feels like there's a rebuttal, or there's almost a qualification for whatever offends my group of people that looks like me. So that's my aspect of this question as far as what do I feel the disconnect is. Everybody's disconnect may be very different, but I'd like to hear everybody's opinion. So Rebecca, I'm gonna let you take the floor. I'm giving you 2 minutes to voice your opinion.
I'm not really sure if I'm gonna even hit the mark on this, but I feel maybe everybody is jumbled into the white cat. Obviously my skin is white, but like meaning that we all came from America and we owned people. Like, I don't find people of ownership. I find them of value. I mean, of course I own my child, but I mean, he's also special needs, so I really have to rein him in. But I feel like everybody, I honestly, for once in my entire life, I feel like I don't know. I think I'm here more to learn than I am to speak. And I can't hear you because you're, yeah.
Okay. So, so you just want to
I I feel like I want to take a step back. I want to learn what I'm supposed to learn and what I should learn. And I also maybe just want to say that we're not all white supremacists. And I mean that, like, of course I feel like I own, like I said, I own my child or a cat or something like that. But human beings, you just shouldn't. I don't feel like. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of. I'm not even sure if I'm hitting the mark here or not. So I guess I'll just shut up.
Oh, that's okay. Listen, Rebecca, I'm sure there's things that's going to be said during this
And
meeting.
I'm not offended. Trust me, I was raised
No,
old school.
no,
I
it's
don't get
okay.
offended.
It's okay. Like I said, I'm sure there's going to be things that's going to be said that's going to fuel your responses and stuff like that. And trust me, you'll get your opportunity. I see that there's other people that jumped onto this call. So I apologize for going back again. I just want to touch base so everybody understand what we're dealing with. First of all, I just want to start out with the rules since we've already started to engage in a conversation. I want everybody to please just mute. If you look at the lower left corner of your screen, there's a little microphone there. Please just mute that so there's no background noise, because I want everybody to have an opportunity to speak and to be heard. Obviously, please, let's just be respectful, because we're here as family. We're not here as enemies or anything like that. So we're here as family, and we're here to have a discussion and come to some understanding. The question that I had at hand that we're talking about, which is the topic, is hold on, let me say it exactly right. What issues regarding race do we feel most disconnected with when we're having conversations with our counterparts, our white brothers and sisters, or anybody who really in this time is having a hard time really grasping what's going on racially in the country, and really what's been going on racially with people of color for a very long time. Okay, so I'm giving everybody the opportunity. The way I'm going to go about it, I'm giving everybody about 2 minutes to really have the opportunity to speak on this matter. I'm going to start following my screen. So I started out with Rebecca. I'm next going to Steve Myers. Okay, and then I'll give everybody their opportunity. Okay. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Jump in.
Awesome. First off, I just want to thank you for putting this on. Like, this is amazing. And that's the number one thing. The number two thing is the fact that you invited me to be part of the discussion is also, I mean, it, blew my mind. I was so humbled by it and your friendship. So thank you for that. And you know that I have some pretty, I won't say counter opinions, but I've got strong opinions. I really I try to read my history. You've given me tons of things to watch and read, and I'm trying to keep up with you. And so as the conversation goes one way or another, my commitment to you all is to participate, even if it's an unpopular view, because I just want to be better. I want to know more. And I was thinking about what you and I go through and what we talk about. And one thing that I'll say is my wife and I, we have a thing where if I feel that there's a problem in the relationship and I want to go to counseling, that's the end of the discussion. And the same thing is that if my wife thinks there's something wrong and I don't, it doesn't matter how I feel. Like, she feels a grievance, it needs to be, that alone is enough to open up the discussion. And so I really try very, very hard not to discount because of my built-in prejudices or built-in concepts of life and how I think things are, because none of us can have all the answers. The one thing that frustrates me probably the most on both sides of the prism are people who assume that regardless of color, that they hold the moral high ground because of any reason, right? On the black side, I've had multiple discussions with friends of mine that are like, well, because they were wronged, that right now they hold the moral high ground. So anything I say is irrelevant, or vice versa. People who say, well, I never owned a slave. I'm not in the South. I don't have a Confederate flag. So therefore I'm not part of the system. Well, that's BS too. You know, that I think that that's all, you know, what I'd really love to see is that people stop politicizing it and start doing this one-on-one as a group, grow these communities, because I feel like it is, I don't think that it's a, you know, what I'm looking to learn is I don't feel like it's a race issue among the people. I don't have any issue with anybody here, and I don't know anybody that I have an issue with in my life, where if black, yellow, red, white, you walk up to me on the street, I'm just going to treat you like a person. And I know that's not true across the board on both sides. So what I'm hoping is to find some answers here that are not political. They're not Democrat, Republican, because I think that they are the root core of this entire issue is the media and what they're doing to separate all of us when we're trying to work hard to get together. That's what I got.
Are we just jumping in, Martin?
Yes, just jump in. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Martin and Tamika, thank you for the invite. Really appreciate it. So my frustration, you know, while I appreciate these conversations are going on right now, you know, it seems like the whole world is talking about Black Lives Matter and the injustices that's going on. You know, I appreciate that, but I think my frustration with all of that is that it took another death to do it. You know, as you know, this has been going on for years, right? The inequities and the injustices has been going on for a very long time. And again, while it's good that we're having these conversations now, it shouldn't have to take the death of a person in order for us to have it. So I think that's my frustration with all of this, as well as I think the lack of sympathy we hear from our counterparts. You know, for instance, this morning I was listening to something. You all know Bubba Wallace, the first Black NASCAR driver. There was a noose found in his locker. And so, you know, someone said that, you know, what's the big deal? You know, it's not a hangman's noose. They tried to justify it as just being a rope or something like that. Now, but to a Black person to see something like that hanging in their locker is, of course, going to offset all types of feelings, right? So I think that with these conversations, for those that don't understand our frustrations, I think the best thing to do is to listen rather than maybe trying to put your input in, because I think that only furthers the divide. And so I think while we're having these conversations that, you know, we really need to listen, at least our counterparts really need to listen to what we're saying and to how we're feeling rather than trying to justify it or give us reasons not to feel that way. So I think that's one of my my frustrations with all of this.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey PJ, it's your turn. You're up.
Hey, what's going on, guys? PJ, you can call me Earl. I'd like to thank Mark and Tamika for bringing this together as well. And it is a matter that should be discussed. It is a big elephant in the room. You know, I was on a Zoom meeting, a radio station with Drew yesterday, and there's a lot of things I kind of held back on. But at the same time, like, I've experienced racism, right? And me being a person that's of you know, sort of kind of equality, like, I'm not gonna say I don't see color, but I think it's deeper than what it is. Obviously, there is an agenda from what I see from my perspective, especially everything being the media publicizing it, like, it's making it the norm, and it's almost kind of like kids watching the cartoons. If you watch cartoons from back in the day, you know, there's certain things that were, like, you know, eased, but now a lot of things are being sort of like shown visually, and visual is a big thing, you know, to the human eyes. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, oh, that's the norm. Oh yeah, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? But you know, I mean, I've experienced it. I mean, majority of the time, I'm probably the only brother that sometimes I go to a lot of events, and I'll be the only brother in the room. You know, and you know, it's funny, and especially in the workplace. Like even the job I'm at now, I'm the only brother driver there, and the first thing people came up to me like to talk to me is like, oh, it was always something dealing with a black joke. I'm like, bro, you know, you could talk to me, right? You know what I mean? I grew up with thick skin, you know, and I grew up with people cracking on each other and things of that nature. But I mean, especially what's going on now, and I see it, I'm like, man, I mean, they just show it with ease. And there is a bigger agenda. But for me, my pet peeve is like, man, it's gotta be a change, man. You know what I mean? And I get there's something really uncomfortable with the situation, you know, with obviously with the races, but I think it's really something really deeper than what it is, because there's a lot of trauma that happened, you know, in the past that, you know, as far as black folks, we never got over, and we didn't even have to be in that era. I mean, it's still going on now, but we feel that. You know what I'm saying? And is this almost is like I said, is a really deep layer on it. You know what I mean? But I mean, that's my opinion. So,
Gotcha. Thank you, PJ. Chris, I'm gonna give you the floor, my friend.
Great. Thanks, Martin.
All right.
Thanks, Earl. That was wonderful. My name is Chris Hewitt, and thanks for inviting me, and sorry I couldn't join the earlier calls. I'm the director of the Hudson Valley Current, which is a community currency that guarantees our money stays in the community. And I was watching a show that Drew and Martin were on, and a few others, and Martin was talking about a commitment from white folk collaborators. And I talked to Martin about my commitment to share information, because I've been memorizing all the facts and data that Martin and Tamika have been sharing with me and other friends in Kingston, because as a publisher of Livelihood newspaper, we always share positive news about community, keeping money local, strengthening main streets, and that's a lot about relationships. So we're in the process of building strong relationships in Kingston around food in our space that we're opening up on the corner of Broadway and O'Neill. And we hope to have different global cuisines so that we engage the community, embrace people as a community kitchen. But I think, Steve, I've also been striving to have those difficult, uncomfortable talks as much as possible. And it helps, because no matter how racist a friend is, they don't know it. And typically, often. And so it's helpful when I don't react and get angry, but help them along the journey that I've been educated upon, because I wasn't educated on the right things growing up. And so now in my 40s, I'm learning important things, but I fortunately started learning about white privilege and the pedagogy and teaching of the oppressed around the world in college. So I've had some time to learn and share information as a publisher. But I think my desire is to continue hearing stories of how it is to grow up when someone lives in poverty, and how it's different than what I experienced, because I was sheltered on Long Island from poverty, depression, sadness, and lived in this bubble that I didn't have to know about the black jokes, Earl, and the problems that people perpetuate and don't even realize they're perpetuating. So I started learning that about that in college, I think. So I love hearing about stories of how people grow up so that I can relate and share the information.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. And I can just piggyback on that. I literally, I think less than 48 hours ago, Chris, he drove up here to have a conversation just to strengthen our alliance and do some really positive things in the community. So again, as I said before, we can't accomplish anything without our alliances and without the brotherhood of our white, white brothers and sisters, and so on and so forth. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you very much for that. Tamika, you're up next.
I'm gonna pass for just a moment because I got something going on, so I'll go last.
Sounds good. Janae, you're up next, son.
Okay. So my biggest things, I'm just gonna step outside because it's kind of noisy in here. My biggest things are the lack of awareness, I feel like, when it comes to race. That's an issue for me, having to explain, which ties into the lack of education. Like we're not taught certain things, so we constantly have to be teaching other people things, and when they don't understand why people are angry or why people are hurting right now, it's frustrating to have to constantly re-explain yourself. Another thing for me is, I think someone said, when people say, well, I don't see race, I personally don't like when people say stuff like that, just because I expect you to see who I am. And I feel like if you're someone who says, I don't see race, then I feel like I could be wrong, but personally, I feel like you're ignoring part of who I am, or you don't want to see the struggle that I've gone through, the struggle that my ancestors have gone through. It's kind of dismissive in a way. That's how I take it. So.
Thank you, Janae. Let me just touch on that a little bit, Janae. I think you're 100% correct, and I think that as we go along, we're going to have that conversation when everybody goes, because I think that where we have to be careful is misunderstanding ignorance, or misunderstanding a lack of knowing, for being deliberate in their misunderstanding. You understand what I'm saying? Or being deliberate in some of the things that they're saying. And I think that some of the things that's important is just understanding that there are certain unspoken things. There's certain things that are very offensive to us, as it would be to any other race or creed that's been oppressed or have gone through some type of trauma. And the number one thing is that you don't want to discount what somebody looks like. You don't want to discount who they are. You don't want to discount what makes them them, because the individual strengthened and the individual appreciated and loved, it also encouraged me to want to know more about you and what makes you an individual, what makes your background powerful. Because now, individually, if we're strong, we come together, now we can truly be a family. We can truly love one another. You understand? So I completely agree with you on that. We're gonna go down to, I think this is Drew that's on, I believe.
Hello, family, and thanks for doing this. You guys always have some knowledge to share. You always I love everybody on this call. Everybody's saying such deep and impactful things. I'm going to take that with me. Let me see. The question, could you repeat that?
Okay, so the question is, what issues regarding race do we feel most disconnected with when it comes to our counterparts?
Right.
So basically, Drew, where do we feel that the disconnect is? You know what I'm saying? We're having conversations with our counterparts, and in our mind, there's certain things that should be, the obvious. In our eyes, it's the obvious, but we're having conversations and we're doing debates on certain things that we feel that should be obvious, but in some light, it's not. So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, I dig it. I guess one of the most, I have two pretty frustrating things. One is if you have our white counterparts asking, well, how do I treat you? What do I do? My first answer is to treat me like a human being. Be nice, Let's speak like human beings. Let's speak like, we're both part and of value on this earth. That's first and foremost. Look at me like a human being. I know that, you know, if you're looked at as cattle, which in America was legal, you know, as slavery. If you look at us like that, and that is what the mindset is, we are less than human, then you know, it's easy to mistreat people that you don't see as human. So look at me as a human being. That's it. I mean, right is right and wrong is wrong. That's how I look at it. So when I got into this conversation the other day, oh, how do I treat you? You know, a black man and all this stuff. I'm like, look, just treat me human. So how do you treat your friend? Treat me like that. I ain't doing anything to you. Let's get to know each other. Who are you? Do you have family? What's your name? You know, that's that type of thing. The second thing I feel is frustrating is not about our counterparts, but about us. It's about our community. It's about actually, you know, finding ways to educate and finding ways to share the truth. What is the truth? Actually sitting down and speaking truth. You know, I feel that on both sides. I think that first gentleman that spoke, what's his name? Steve? Steve said something that was pretty powerful. He said it was the media. The media has a huge impact on how we think, huge impact on how we react toward each other. And I feel that education is even part of that. So if education, if in the schools, they're not telling the truth, we are all, you know, we've all been bamboozled. We've all been told a lie. So we have to undo this lie. Sorry, I was trying to call in. We have to undo this lie we've been taught and begin to respect each other and the truth. You know, that to me is it. So it's about the truth. It's about humanity, treating and right, wrong is wrong. It's real simple.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Just to touch on that a little bit, I think you're 100% correct. And honestly, Steve and I, we have tons of conversations, man. We have tons of conversations, and you know, we don't. It's very rarely do we not see eye to eye. I don't even consider it us not seeing eye to eye. I think that there's a balance of education that goes back and forth. I think where he tries to enlighten me on certain things, and then I try to enlighten him on certain things. But there is a truth in all of that. And I'm a firm believer that I always say, you know, two things can be true, right? So, you know, Drew, to say to highlight what you're talking about, let's just talk about like the media, right? I think that we all agree that the media uses our despair as a cash cow. They would rather us bump heads so that they can get more views. I think we all agree with that. I think that even in the aspect of the president of the United States, I believe that that's a major money-making thing to play on the part of racism in even that aspect. But like I said, two things can be true, right? You can't deny, and this is where I think that this is where the disconnect is, because there's certain things that we can pick up on that we can identify quickly that's offensive. And I believe that that's where we have to bridge that's where we have to bridge the gap. I think that's where the education comes from, that not only people of color should be able to recognize that, but I think it's a problem that our white counterparts, they're not able to recognize that themselves. And that's where I think there's the bridge is broken there. I'm gonna jump to I think it's Kari's time up. Kari, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you're up next.
I'm going to go back to the question at hand because I was also multitasking. You know, as an educator, there are many different things that create disconnect. There's a lack of understanding of one another. There is also a lack of patience for that understanding that you need to have in order to ensure that you can have an informed discussion
Hold on,
regarding.
can we stop? Hold on, Kari, stop real quick. Somebody please mute their, thank you. I think we're all muted. Thank you. I'm sorry, Kari, go ahead. Can you start again?
There's a lack of patience sometimes for people to want to sit down and have informed discussions, because we have a lot of conversations sometimes that revolve around the fact that people like to live within their comfort zones and don't necessarily want to entertain anything that's new and different from their own reality. So sometimes you have to stop and acknowledge in others that you're going to have a conversation that's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have a conversation that's going to have to force people to come to the table with whatever baggage they truly own. So with my staff, we did a lot of trauma-informed discussions and cultural sensitivity conversations. So the first thing we did was the ACEs test. And the ACEs test is a little bit of a self-reflective conversation that you don't have to share with anyone regarding the biases and things that you yourself bring to the table, because you can't state that you're willing to be informed if you don't even know what you come to the table with. So you have to have a reflective conversation with yourself. You don't necessarily have to share any of this with anyone, but you do have to know what your own biases are so that you can address them before you decide that you want to be open-minded to address anything that has to do with anyone else. So when you do the ACEs exam, it gives you an understanding of who you are as a human being and what innate things you would really have to sit down with before involving yourself in even a conversation like this. Because when you involve yourself in a conversation like this, there are a lot of people that you're going to want to absorb things from, and you're going to want to understand their point of view, but you can't do that if you don't even understand your own point of view. And that's one of the things that I think is happening with bandwagoners. So we have a lot of bandwagoners, and we have a lot of people who are dealing with issues of saviorism. And when you're dealing with bandwagoners and you're dealing with issues of saviorism, you have to know why you're in this fight with people of color. It can't be because it's today's trend and you have nothing better to do. It has to be because you truly understand what is going on with others, and that you truly want to see differences made for other people and a quality of life change for those who deserve it at this point. And saviorism is one of those things that comes along with the statement of white privilege, which is also part of the White Fragility book, that deals with the fact that many people come into situations with Black Lives Matter and supporting things that are innately issues for people of color, because they want to be able to look at themselves in the mirror and feel that they did something, they saved someone. But you can't be in it for that either, because pity does not go a very long way. You have to have true love. True love is what's going to take you through the end of the fight. Pity is short-lived, goes away, people get bored, they move on to something new. And if you do notice that every single time we have an issue that arises that creates systemic uprising, that something else happens in the world to mask it. So every time somebody of color gets killed, something devastating happened. I mean, look at Elijah McClain. Nobody even knew what happened to that young gentleman until all of these things came about, because right after Elijah McClain, some other national systemic thing happened to mask what had happened to him, and it died away and nobody paid attention, and we moved on to something that we could all stand for again. We cannot do that. It is unacceptable. Everybody has to stand their ground. We can't have squirrel moments where we're all over the place with what it is we're trying to do. It has to be unified. There has to be a concrete understanding of what is going on, because for me, my teachers have to know what they're doing in their classrooms, because they're teaching young Black and brown children how to survive in this world, because we bury babies in my district. It's not about who's not going to go to college. It's about who we don't want to bury next year. And we've buried so many already. So we start every school year with that conversation. Because when you're talking about how much you impact the lives of Black and brown children, there is no room for disconnect.
Thank you, Kari. Thank you so much. You know, so we're gonna go back around, but I'm gonna, you know, I just wanted to say something that definitely marries exactly what Kari just said. I like to use an analogy for the question, what can we do? Because I've been posed that question a lot from, you know, my white brothers and sisters. And I do have white counterparts who I consider brothers and sisters. And I look at it like this, you know, I feel like when it comes to race relations, we can't be cowards. And I'm saying that politely. We cannot be cowards when it comes to race relations. And I'm gonna say why I think that a lot of times we fall victim to cowardice behavior. If we look on the TV, and typically as a whole, black, white, whatever the case may be, if we look at the TV and we see commercials of dogs and cats suffering and animals suffering and so on and so forth, we don't have to, we don't have to be a dog or a cat. We're human beings. We don't have to be a dog or a cat or an animal to that aspect to understand that that's not okay. And I think that as a whole, as humanity, we galvanize together to say we need to put a stop to that. But when it comes to race relations, when it comes to the small thing is race that separates us, right? As the color of our skin, we cannot relate. Or there's a side that says, you know, I've never experienced racism, so I don't understand how you may feel. And this analogy, I think, rings true. And I feel as a man, let me just speak for myself. If I'm in a room with other men, and there's a woman in that room or women in that room, and those women are being harassed and they're being disrespected, I don't need to be a woman in order for me to step up and say, yo, that's not okay. And I think that it's even more profound for me to step up as a man to say that's not okay than even another woman. I've just seen this. I've done security, I've done bodyguard, I've done all of this, and I'm telling you my experience. Whether I'm wrong, right, or indifferent, you guys tell me. But I feel that a man stepping up and saying it's not okay to disrespect women is more powerful than a woman saying it. So I use that analogy to say that it's even more powerful for our white brothers and sisters to step up, even before we do, to speak out against racism. It's even more profound because you're talking to the audience that you're more familiar with. And I think that the impact is even more profound. So with that being said, let's go back up top, Steve. I just like to hear your opinion on what you've heard so far. And I'd like to know from you, and please, everybody, this is, like I said, this is open talk, but I think this is very important. Steve, I say this to say, and I don't want to put you out there, but I think it's important because I want your voice to be heard. Steve is a Trump supporter, okay? And we've had a lot of conversations on why some of the things that Trump says and does is deemed racist to our people and deemed very offensive. It's important for me, and it's important that I want him to say his piece on that and why he views that as incorrect. Or if you even do, Steve, I don't want to speak for you, but I'd like to give you the floor so you could speak on that. And so we can actually hear where your take is on that. And then I would love for you to actually hear our take, not mine, because you already heard mine, but I'd like you to hear some of our take. Kari is an educator, and just to let you guys know, she's probably in one of the most dangerous districts in upstate New York. Okay, so she's an educator right there in Newburgh. We have Rita, who is an alderwoman right here in Kingston. So we have some voices here that can really speak volumes, and I would love for them to hear your take on things. Go ahead, Steve.
I appreciate that. A couple things. I want to jump back to K. Bunce, I think, who,
That's Carby.
okay, the
That's
gentleman
Carby.
who said something about, media, things like that, and about respecting each other. And one thing that I see a lot of on both sides is this is really hard work. I mean, not everything I'm going to hear here is going to be comfortable, and nothing you're going to hear, things you hear from me is not going to be comfortable. And we're all people that have agreed to work hard to be better. But I think that, again, I mean, you've got inner family issues where people give up because change is overwhelming. And it's very difficult to hear that you need to do better or be better. And I think on the white side, one of the things that causes us as whites, and I don't put myself in this category because I think, I really try to listen, 2 ears, 1 mouth. And, but sometimes it's assumed that we're the ones who have to do all the work to make things okay. And I think that that's something that shuts people down because it creates whataboutisms. Well, what about Chicago? And what about this? And what about this dumb thing that I saw on Fox News, right? So that's, again, like the learning. I mean, it's like we have to learn literally a whole nother language that's not my language, that's not your language, that is a common language derived amongst this collaboration that throws out anything that's divisive. And the second we start as people assuming that we don't have as much work to do as you have to do, I think that's where the disconnects happen, not because we don't care, but because I got my own problems and you got your own my kids got to go to school and just a little bit of background is that I grew up experiencing racism because I've had my ass kicked by Black people at least 15 times in my life. Because I grew up in a very poor area of town and I was white. I don't care. I mean, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't care about racism, but I never looked at them and said, they kicked my butt because I was white. No, they kicked my butt because I was different. And being white was part of that. And I wasn't part of their, but if it was 10 poor white kids, they would have kicked my ass too. Like, I just happened to be in a Black neighborhood and grow up with a lot of Black folks, right? And that's not to try to give me a pass. It's just say that, I do have some of that like inner, I get it. Like there's clearly two sides. And I believe that that affluent white America, they don't get it. I don't think they want to get it, but I don't think they don't want to get it because they agree with it. I just think it's really hard work. And movements, even though you may be causing change on the Black Lives Matter front, I agree, A, it should have never happened because somebody died, a horrific death. But B, if the ultimate goal is to get the attention of a mass population of people who are just, once they come overwhelmed, and Martin, car business, you got 35 minutes to sell a car because at that point they're onto their own problems. And I think that's just human nature, is that because we are disconnected and we may not live that life day to day, it is so hard to be empathetic to other people and what they're going through and what you're experiencing. I want everybody to have a good life and opportunity. And I don't ever want to hear that somebody's held down because they're Black or brown or yellow. But I'm also not going to say that I don't believe that doesn't happen. And on the Trump front, just to be clear, I did not vote for Trump. In fact, I haven't voted in an election for 12 years. I do have political opinions, and I do like policies that he's doing. But I also want to be clear that I just think that Trump is just he's a jerk off. I mean, he's just, but he's not a different jerk off than any other jerk off that's been in office. I believe Obama was a jerk off. I believe George Bush was a jerk off. I believe Bill Clinton was a terrible president. I believe they all did some things that were positive and they give us scraps. But, especially over this time, I've really come to the meaning of, look, there's no way that I believe that anybody here that can say that they hate Trump, but also can say that they're going to vote for Joe Biden in this election, That's a disconnect for me, because he has done you no favors ever. And I don't believe he's going to do any favors moving forward. Like, just talking about general policy, the guy is scum. He's not less scum than Donald Trump. And this is kind of my point, is that when we start talking about how Trump can solve our problem or how Joe Biden can solve our problem, and putting one of these guys into office is going to matter, it ain't going to matter. What you're doing here is going to matter. The grassroots, community driven. But guess what? It's only going to matter to your community. You can't fix the other community, or that they have to fix their community. And I've really learned recently that, you know, voting grassroots, local politics, what's going on here, that's important, because Trump wants us to think that there's no problem with the blacks. And he wants us to think that he's your savior because he's done more for black unemployment, soundbite, than any other president. And whereas there may be low black unemployment pre-COVID, again, it's not solving the main issue, right? And where I have a disconnect is thinking that other than treating you like a human and doing the right thing, and again, Martin, you give me huge opportunity for reflection here. I've gone back through my life like a slideshow and said, was I appropriate here? Did I make the right call here? Did I discount somebody because they were black over here? Did I prejudge them because they were Indian? Probably, because I don't know any better, right? Like, now that I'm going back and I'm looking, you've really given me an opportunity to, you know, again, I'm hesitant to use catchphrases like white privilege, because I think, again, when we start using a language that is given to us by people who put money into movements, that's causing more division, because white people don't get white privilege. They just don't get it. It's very difficult to understand when you grew up affluent, what it's like to be non-affluent or poor. Now, I grew up poor and I grew up with black people. So I get it. Like, I was poor. I used to steal things. I've been arrested. Like, I had to really turn my life around to become a good family man and a good father. But my point to that is, though, is that I don't get along with affluent people either. But when we start saying, like, well, oh, you have white privilege, again, it's like a circuit breaker goes off in their head. It's very difficult, as Chris put it, how do you understand what you haven't experienced? And so for the Trump thing, like, I just start turning off when I start hearing, like, you know, again, we posted on Facebook, Trump did this and he said that, and CNN said that Trump did this and he believes that, and he wants to put children in cages. I'm a little more academic about it, because I'm not pro-Trump. I'm just not going to be bash Trump, because when we say that Trump's putting kids in cages, and I actually know that that's been a policy that's been in effect for decades in this country, but the media, again, is just using that as another opportunity to divide us on a micro issue, that again, just noise. I'd rather do this 5 days a week. I've stopped listening to Fox News. I've stopped listening to Sean Hannity. I've really picked non-biased, like, I like to listen to liberal voices on YouTube. I like Jimmy Dore, Crystal and Sager from Rise as a news source, because they have a left and a right bias, and they really just, they're not shilling for any side. Because once you turn on CNN or Fox or ABC or MSNBC, every single one of them, their dollar bills are literally designed by us going out there and creating tweets and social media and whatever we need to do, and it keeps us divided. I would love to hear some conversation where, you know, again, if I can say that Trump's an idiot, then I'd like to hear some people say that Joe Biden's an idiot and that Bill Clinton's an idiot, because none of them are inviting us to their victory party. None of them are inviting us to their backyard barbecue. None of them give a crap about you. They don't give a crap about me. And she's proof. I mean, they'll give it all to the companies and the corporations and the tax breaks and what they're doing. And we're fighting illegal wars across the country, killing hundreds and millions of black and brown people. Obama bombed more people than anybody, any prior president. We ran out of bombs. He bombed so many people. Trump hasn't slowed down. We just haven't created any new conflicts yet. Even though he'll say it, we haven't done it. And for that, I'm thankful. You know, so that for me, it's like back to normal everyday stuff is like, let's get out of that high level conversation and let's just talk about you and me, right? Like, because I don't want to be afraid, and I'm just being real. I don't want to be afraid because I'm walking downtown and I see two black guys and I'm by myself. But we know that they're afraid of me and that I'm afraid of them. I don't know how else to put it. That's my internal programming that I work to try to fix every single day. And I don't cross the street. I don't do this, but that, you know, you said to be real, and I'm just trying to be real, that's what I want to fix. I want to be able to walk down the street and see two guys. I don't care what color they are, but I want to recognize that culture and be like, hey, what's up? How you doing? How's life treating you? But I can't do that. I can talk to you and probably half the people here that I've talked to before, you know, but when are we going to start talking and just walking up on the street and just being okay with each other?
Right. Right. I agree.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that time.
So,
That's good.
so if you don't mind, I'd like to just jump on and
Yeah,
address.
I'm trying to give you I'm giving you the opportunity to jump in.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you, Steve, for sharing your opinion. I appreciate that. Just want to address a few things that that I heard along the way, and it's based off of everyone is response is based off of what they have experienced in life. So I've had to have multiple conversations with people about, well, the what ifs, as you said. Well, you know, black on black crime, and you know, nobody raises an eyebrow when a black kid kills another black kid, and all of these things. Okay, what about Chicago? And I said, okay, I do understand, but have you ever heard of white on white crime? Do you understand that if you're in an impoverished situation and it comes to my life or yours, and you're black or you're white and I'm white, it doesn't matter. You're going to kill whoever you're in front of if you're in that type of a mindset. But you don't hear about white on white crime because it's not media perpetuated. So that's one thing. And I think that, again, like to many people's points, the media has driven a lot of the excuses that are continued to make to do the work. So, you know, it is hard work to undo a bias that has been mentally drilled into people's heads from the time they were small. You know, they've done tests where if you show a little girl a black doll and a white doll, they're going to say the black doll is ugly and the white doll is beautiful. I mean, it is a huge systemic brainwashing that has been done on both sides, really, because black folks, we don't even realize how much trauma has been passed down in our DNA and what we're reacting to. So, you know, because my mother, I'm going to give you an example. My mother and my grandmother are white, and my father is black, and my mother didn't understand what anybody was going through, whether it was me or whether it was somebody else in the world, until it happened to her child or until it happens to her grandchildren. My grandmother was a huge, you know, she watched Fox, she loved Trump, the whole thing, until her grandson came home from school and in tears because he was called a nigger and told that he was going to be sent back to Africa because Trump, the dialogue isn't always in your face racist, which he does have a lot of in your face racist remarks that are offensive to us. But what he does is embolden a mentality. He emboldens a mentality from people who only needed that inch to go that mile. And that's a huge portion of it. And I happen to agree that nobody is really a good candidate because everybody's, you know, track record is complete crap. But what my point to it is if you are emboldening racist behavior that's going to potentially kill our children, American born children, because, you know, the excuses are, oh, let's put them in cages because, you know, they had a choice to immigrate here. And when we're all immigrants here, unless you're Native American, but we're not going to go there. So if you are going to make that conscientious decision, then you have to look within yourself of your morality, because I know for a fact
that this is an emboldened situation because of experience. Now, when you deal with, I haven't seen it or I need proof, then you can have that conversation on the proof, you know, and the amount of recorded incidents of hate crimes. There have been multiple recorded incidents of hate crimes, and it has increased since he's taken office. So that's something that we can actually look at as a tangible factor in things. And then, you know, I think with white privilege, it's not saying that you were born into a necessarily better situation. It's also going the step further, saying, well, if your name is John Deere or your name is Jaquan Malone, you are more likely to get hired for a job or called to be hired for a job. If you walk into a grocery store or a department store and you're followed just because of how you look, there are so many different ways that white privilege play into it that go further than the situation that you were born into. And I think that I understand that it's a stand back, oh, you know, just because I'm white doesn't mean I was privileged, but we have to understand that that is the reality, because, you know, if my mother went into a police precinct, she was going to be addressed in the city. And if my father went into it, he was not going to be addressed. That's the reality of the situation. And it has happened time and time again on personal accounts as well as throughout history. So it's so systemic, and there's so many different examples. I don't want to take up too much time, but we don't want to make excuses not to do the work. And I appreciate everybody on the call, because I know that it is a systemic thing, and everybody on the call wants to be involved in making true change within this world, and you know, that's a beautiful thing. But we have to be willing to really every day do the work, which is grueling and exhausting. It is exhausting, but how exhausting has it been for 400 plus years for us to be trying to inch our way up to get to an equal standpoint, not to get to, you know, not to surpass, but just for equality in all things, economically, socially, you know, in educationally, you know, and it, just to address that, just with education, because what Drew and Kari had said is a huge piece of the puzzle. You know, the education system, unfortunately, our textbooks were written by white men, and they did not tell the truth. I mean, when I went to school, you know, Christopher Columbus had discovered America, you know, and that's not the truth. That is not the truth. We know that. So just trying to unlearn, you know, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. No, there are so many amazing African-American inventors, and it shouldn't just be 1 month of Black history. It should be history, period. So, you know, to come to America and to be stripped of, you know, of your language, of your dignity, of your livelihood, and still try to 400 years later come up and above and succeed. And they say pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You know, it's kind of hard to pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you don't have boots, if you never got boots. So we just have to have understanding that there are so many, and we have to have understanding of the mentality, yes, on both sides, because many people don't realize how indoctrinated they've been, and the different thinking that has just been ingrained from 1, 2, 3, all the way up to however old they are. We just have to understand and take patience with each other to try and get it. And trust me, I have mostly white friends on my Facebook because I went to a mostly white school, and and they come into me and they try to have conversation, and I appreciate that, but we have to continue to spark the education to continuously reach the next level of understanding on both sides. So that's all I'm gonna say for now.
Martin, can I jump in real quick?
You are yes, please do.
So, so Steve, I just going back to what Steve was saying, I really appreciate the honesty. I do. I just wanted to just comment on just a couple of things that you said. I want us to be careful that we don't confuse racial prejudice with systemic institutionalized discrimination on the part of people of color, right? You talked about how 2 black guys beat you up because you were white, you know, and you know, that's like reverse racism. There's a myth about reverse racism that goes on, that white people are, you know, they experience racism, because racism really doesn't have to do, it's not so much the color of your skin, it's a system, right? And it's institutionalized. So it's about power, those that have power versus ones that don't have the least amount of power, right? So I just think that we need to be careful when we say that white people can be, you know, can experience racism. I don't believe that, because it's about power, you know? And so these myths that we hear about, when we talk about doing the work, you know, I don't feel like it's my job to explain what people of color have experienced in the last 400 years. I think that if white people want to understand it, they do need to do the work. I think that they need to educate themselves. There's plenty of ways to do it. If you want to come have a conversation with me, then that's fine. But I don't think that I should be expected to educate you on my history, because you see that it's here. It's happened. You've had experiences. Most people of color will tell you that when they walk into a store, they're followed. So this is what, when you talk about white privilege, or it's a buzzword, it's not really a buzzword, it's true. White privilege does exist. So if both of us are walking in the store, you and me, or me and a white woman, the chances that I will get followed are more greater than the chances that you will get followed. And that simply has to do with the color of my skin, because we're culturally conditioned to believe that white is superior and black is inferior. It is just a fact. It is a hard thing to digest and to say it's true, but it is a fact, right? And so the results of that is that we're marginalized and we're underestimated, right? Because of that cultural conditioning that we've had from the time that we've been born. So I just wanted to touch on that. I'm not even gonna get into Trump and the whole thing about anything like that, because that can go on and on and on and on about that. So that's a whole nother question, a whole nother conversation. But I just think that we just have to be a little bit more mindful when we use these words or we throw out these terms. You know, reverse racism, it's a myth. You know, white privilege, oh, that's a buzzword that we're hearing now because of the uprising of all the protests and things like that. That is true. That is not a buzzword. White privilege does exist. It has existed for a long time. It's just that now people are finally catching on to it and finding out what it is, because we have been using the terminology so long now. So just, I mean, if we're gonna, let's just be honest about these things that we're talking about, right? And understand that white people, because of your skin color, you are on a higher level playing ground. And when you talk about reverse racism, what you're saying is that we're on an even level playing ground, and that is not the truth. And you can look at that in the banking, you can look at that in housing, you can look at that in policing, a whole lot of different areas. You'll see that. And so we got to be careful when we throw out these buzzwords.
Thank you, Rita. I'm gonna let you jump on, Chris. But something I just wanted to touch base on. I would like to combine two things that I heard. I heard Steve mention grassroots, and Kari, you know, which is extremely profound, that she would say that, you know, here, and you know what, let me just combine three, because what Rita's just talking about is that there is a difference, right? There's a difference. And one thing that I want, you know, I want everybody to understand, especially our white counterparts, that it's not the same. You know, our struggles are not the same. Even when it appears that the struggle is the same, there's a difference. And I'm gonna explain why. Kari said something that has been bothering me since she said it, you know, a few minutes ago. And she said that We're educating our children, and the goal is not to get them to college. The goal is for them to survive, to live. That's profound, because what I want to explain, and I want everybody to understand, racially, that puts us as a group of people in a very anxiety state. When you have to, when you have to educate your children, and you have to worry about your children when they walk through the door, when they're going to school, or when they're doing just regular old things, that you shouldn't have to worry about them losing their lives, that's a problem. So now, again, yes, this is important for us to do it on a grassroots level, and believe me, we're doing it. You know what I'm saying? We're out there in the streets, we're talking to our children, we're trying to change the narrative, you know, we're creating organizations, you know, we're doing our best, but it almost feels, and I don't know, when Kari can touch on this, I'll let her touch on this. I don't want to speak for her, but for me personally, it almost feels like we're so behind the 8 ball that we can't catch up to the murder. We can't catch up to the oppression. We can't catch up to the segregation. We just can't catch up. So it's almost like it feels as though we're doing work, and the only guarantee is that we're gonna leave the same work to be done for our children, for our grandchildren, for our great-great-grandchildren. And I'm telling you, just think about this. As a white man or woman, I don't think anybody wants to go to their grave knowing that they're leaving struggle for the next generation. I think that one thing that we can all attest to, agree to, is that we all strive to do better for our families, and we want to ensure the survival for the next generation. That is something as Black people that we can't 100% say that that's a reality. So as a race, as a group of people, we are constantly in anxiety. We're constantly in a state of survival instead of living. There's a difference between living and there's a difference in surviving. And it just feels like our people are always in a state where we have to survive. We have to find the next meal. We have to find the next dollar. We have to worry about, you know, police officers. We have so many things that we have to worry about. So I just wanted to touch base and kind of combine those 3 things that stood out to me, and just, you know, kind of summarize that a little bit of how I feel about that. Chris, you can jump. Hold on 1 second. Are you trying to jump in, Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm like waving to see if it's okay if I can ask a question.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm asking because I want to know, there's personal reasons and maybe out of ignorance, so everybody can claim their ignorance one thing or another. But what is it we could do? And now I know everybody lumps the white skin tone or black skin tone, or, you know, what, well, I'm not sure about that, but white, because again, I'm not, but white skin tone is a race, like the American race, even though like my ancestor or my grandparents, hell, my even parents didn't come from America, so I don't even know whatever race you want to consider me, but white, I guess. So what can we do? Oh God, I was throwing so much information, so I can't pinpoint it all. Everything you, everybody just said. What is, like, if you could just like name something that if you were speaking to me as if I were representing all of the color of my skin people, or
so you're
what is something we could do? Because I'm asking, like I said, for a couple of reasons. One, my nephew is, I mean, and now I guess it's okay to say he's Black, as you know, he comes from a Black family. My niece is white, but you would never know it with the child. Like he's dark. I have nephews that are Mexican. Like, I mean, like my whole family's just a big mess of everything combined. Heinz or whatever you want to call it. Like, I'm a big ketchup blob. But like, so if you could tell this ketchup blob to tell the rest of the ketchup blob, what the hell? Like the people that were like, you know, like I have family members. I'd have one side coming at me with one thing, one side coming at me with the other, and the other, and the other, and nobody gave a, excuse my French, hope no our little ears around them, earmuffs. They gave a fuck because they weren't like offended by anything. Like no offense was taken. It was like, you get your ass out there taking ibuprofen and get the hell out of the house. You know, that kind of a thing. Like that was the kind of household I was raised in. No father, my mother and her grandfather. I mean, I do have a father, obviously, but you know, like, so there's so many things that go into what I became, which is a one big pile of nothing anyway. So what could I do to pass it on? I mean, like, what can I do? Like, I guess that's just it. If I could tell the whole big blobs of ketchups out there.
Okay, so Rebecca, what I'm gonna do, and believe me, I want you to hold on to that, because I believe that as we go around and we touch on everybody's sentiments, I think you're gonna get your answer. You know, first of all, you being on this call is the first step. Let me just say that you being on a call is not a small accomplishment, and it's not a small gesture. The fact that you're on the call listening to this, that's a major step. But
yeah,
I
you know, I joke around. I mean, like, between, good God, Key and Peele, they're the most funny, like, people, but like they're also the most racist against their own type of people. I'm like, so I get mixed message. Like, you know, like but I wouldn't care, because what's funny is funny. You know, that's whatever. You can't control what makes you laugh, and I laugh over everything. And so, like, I just, like, think that the media, not just news media, I mean, like, fun, you know, like sitcoms, shows, things like that. Like, there's so much that, like, I don't get offended by. So whatever you want to say, like, but I feel like now just... Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I'm going back to muting myself. Okay.
Can I chime in? Thanks, Rebecca. Lovely. And it reminds me of something Janae said, that there's a lack of awareness. And so Black people are always being asked, what can we do? And every time I'm around Martin and Tamika, I have new ideas. So I thought of a white people education corner where we can come together and learn together, because like Rita said, racism is about the definition. And in classes that I've taken and spent a lot of money to take them, because it's my responsibility to learn, I took classes in Undoing Racism by the People's Institute, and they define racism as racial bias plus power is racism. So like Rita said, it involves power. And we also learned the definition of white and how it took 400 years to make that definition, where in the first in the 1600s, Irish people and Scottish people didn't identify with white. And so the British Crown would make laws about white people not allowing slaves to escape. So they made laws about not allowing whites to let slaves escape, and the Scottish and Irish kept doing it. And so the British had to change the law to increase the definition of white. And what we learned is when they asked every person in the room to write on a board what they liked about being white, what they liked about being Black, what they liked about being Latinx and Asian, we found that the white board was all about privilege. I enjoy that I'm not that scared when I get pulled over. I enjoy that I'm treated well at the bank. And the Black examples of pride were about music and food and culture. And so when we become white, we have to leave behind our culture that our parents brought here. So I identify as Sicilian, and there's 13 nations conquered Sicily over time. So my blood over time is very diverse, but I'm still identifying as white because my family told me to identify as white. And we had to lose my dad's culture, which is Irish and English, to become white and accepted. And it took time for my grandmother to accept this whiteness. So she never learned English. My mother had to accept it. And I identify as Sicilian, but also white. And as I went through this education and found that they were saying that all white people are racist because of the definition, I said, can I be a loving racist? And when do I tell my whole family we're racist? And so that's a difficult question. They said, don't rush to tell your whole family. Just learn, continue learning, and be an anti-racist. We're against racism. So if I could touch on a couple more points, Martin, I've been taking notes about what you asked. I wanted to
Please feel free.
to the media component, and I went to journalism school and communication. And in journalism, we learned a saying, if it bleeds, it leads. So you were right, everyone who mentioned it. If it's bad news about oppression, blood, guns, guts, war, that will always be on the cover as the lead story, because it's all for-profit media and they have to sell papers to stay in business. So we learn in journalism school to put the bloody stuff on the cover. And since I've been publishing, self-publishing in '96, we've had good news publications. First, it was social awareness about global change. Then we created something called The Movement. And now Livelihood is about keeping money local, strengthening main streets, and revealing abundance, because it's all around us. So it's hard and challenging to sell papers when it's all good news. Like, why don't we hear about our heroes who are caring for our neighbors every day on Fox or other news channels? It's because Fox admitted it's not actually news, it's entertainment. So it's not real journalism that we're experiencing from them. I also wanted to ask Kari where we can find more info about the ACEs test. And maybe you can address that in a minute. And just to touch on the presidency thing, I feel like all presidents lately have been status quo presidents. They're maintaining what I think it was FDR warned us about the military-industrial complex, and they're maintaining the military-industrial complex and now the prison-industrial complex. So those are status quo presidents that won't change a lot. So I'm a local councilman and when Bernie ran last, he said if I wanted to make changes to run, and I won the election in, what year is it now? 2018. And I'm having a public forum with my fellow councilmen in late July about our police department becoming a peace department, which is part of the executive order from the state. So what can we do, Rebecca? As much as we can is what I would answer.
Thank you.
At least, can you like say one thing?
Sure.
Other than just tell people be nice to each other. I mean,
that really helps though. I think what I would say is I do what I am good at, which is sharing information and journalism. So when I've been taking notes because it sparks ideas, and maybe it'll be an article in my paper next month or a conversation I have with my kids later. I just have to live it.
So
Can I address Chris's question about ACEs?
yes, please.
Okay. So Chris, ACEs is it's a test, a psychological exam that gives you a score that rates the adverse situations that you've encountered during your childhood. So when we talk about what you bring to the table, we talk about the experiences you've had and how they create your biases or reactions to, or whatever it is that you're going to now engage in as you're growing into adult status. So the higher your score, the more things that you're going to bring to the table that you may have to address within yourself. Okay. So the reason that we do ACEs with our educators is, and our educators in my building did it voluntarily, because certainly you can't impose self-reflection on anybody. It has to be something that people engage in willingly if you're going to really truly reflect, right? Otherwise, it's something that's being done to you and not with you. And we don't want anybody to feel like anything's being done to them if you're really going to have an authentic response to anything. So when my teachers engaged in it, we then broke up into cohorts of people dealing with the Eric Jensen model. Are you familiar at all with any of Eric Jensen's work? Okay, so Eric Jensen does several books. He did Teaching with Poverty in Mind and Engaging Students with Poverty in Mind, okay? And in the Eric Jensen cohorts, what we do is we discuss the trauma-informed classroom. And we talk about the fact that if you have a lot of childhood traumas that you're having a difficult time overcoming, coming to terms with, finding, ways in which to coexist, finding strategies to overcome, that there's a great possibility that you're going to engage in these biased behaviors in your classroom. So if you have it, so there would be children that are not necessarily relatable for you. There's going to be, you're not going to notice if the curriculum is biased because you're just going to go with the flow because that's what you were taught. So we're all going to, you know, lockstep and keep it moving. And we're not going to really question anything because we went through it. So I guess everybody else is going to go through it because we compartmentalize trauma, right? So when you compartmentalize trauma and you try to find a way in coping strategies and coping skills, if you will, then you're not really extending yourself beyond your comfort zone. And in order to teach children, you have to be able to relate and extend yourself beyond your comfort zone, because everybody who walks in your classroom, everybody who walks into your life is going to have their own story. Steve, I admire your courage in explaining your childhood story to us because you didn't have to do that in order to make your statement. You didn't have to explain the things that had gone on in your life that might have changed your perception of walking through a crowd of Black men. It certainly gives substance to what it is that you're talking about. And it makes it understandable that when you come into a situation where you're dealing with Black men, that might be the first thing on your mind. Are they going to treat me as if I matter? Are they going to treat me as if I am also a human being? Because that's not how you were treated as a child. So when you come into a conversation, you have to know that about yourself. You have to be able to reflect on that so that you remind yourself to be open-minded enough to put that aside. Because in any trauma-informed situation, we have to talk about the amygdala, right? The amygdala is the part of the brain where all of our knowledge is I'm sorry, I'm still getting over being sick, so my vocabulary is starting to wane. But when you're talking about dealing with trauma and you're dealing with the way your mind compartmentalizes the knowledge, if your amygdala is not fully intact, then you're dealing with different types of trauma. So if you're in a classroom that is also presenting trauma, you're not going to learn even the most minute of things because your body is always going to be in a fight or flight state. Now, as we've grown in education, we realize that it's not just fight or flight. It's fight, flight, and freeze. Freeze is probably one of the most dangerous things because now you're rooted and now you can't move. There's no growth and there's no regression. So the most stagnant existence is when you're in traumatic state and you freeze. So when we're dealing with ACEs, again, a self-reflective tool, it's just a great understanding of self. I also did the bias training and I also did resilience training. Both of them are phenomenal things. And I turned around and turnkeyed resilience to my staff. And again, dealing with how to overcome the things that we bring to the table so we do no harm to others. And harm comes in so many different ways, right? It's intentional harm, it's unintentional harm, but it's still harm nonetheless. And somebody mentioned it, and I don't remember who it was. Tamika, you said so many eloquent things that I wanted to piggyback on 1,000 of them, and then we got into other conversations and my brain just lost it. But we were talking about being young. Black children don't have the luxury of being children because we have to start the heavy conversations with them when they're little. Otherwise, we're not sure that they are going to survive into their young adulthood. We have to start training them when they're babies to how to speak to people so that they're not misunderstood, how to walk across the street without being, labeled as a threat. That's a luxury that is not taken from our children's white counterparts. And that's what I mean when I say privilege, because privilege is something that's given to one group more so than any other, right? So it's unfortunate that white privilege is a term that people now are angry about, but I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter how we discuss it. Anything that coins something that talks about lack of comfort zone and change is going to be demonized. Nobody wants to hear anything that they're not willing to embrace. So we can say anything. I can use a synonym for privilege. I can use many different ways to describe it. If you're not ready for the conversation, you're not embracing it, which means that you're not being self-reflective, which means that I can't really help you in that journey to self-discovery. You have to decide which pieces you want to embrace. And I guess this goes to Rebecca a little bit, sweetheart. You have to make the choices as to where you want to go with this journey. We can't do that for you, nor should we, because it can't always be an uprising that's led by people of color. You have to decide where you fit in this and whether or not it's authentic for you to do so. And the choices that you make have to belong to you, because that's the only way that you're going to truly engage in what is happening to those around you in the most authentic and undirected manner. It's got to be from your heart, and it's got to be real. And one of the things that now that I turned 50, my thing is I have no room for other than real on my ride. If you are not real, then you need to be on somebody else's ride, because I am older and I am exhausted. I am tired of dragging people behind me that really don't get it, because now you're a burden to me, and I'm trying to help everybody move forward as well. So we've got a lot of conversations going on in this particular platform that are very enlightening, because you get to see things from so many perspectives. I have conversations with my children every day. My children are very rooted in their Black culture, but their father is a white Irish police officer. Look at all the faces. I'm watching you. Yes.
Yeah.
There are difficult conversations that my children have every single day, because they have people who expect them to understand everything. They're not children, but they are still children. So it is not their burden to understand everybody's point of view. It's their burden to understand their own points of view and what they bring to the table. They don't have to defend their father. They love him, they respect him for who he is, but they don't have to defend him. But their father isn't part of the problem, because he's never engaged in this behavior. You have to talk about the human beings who individually have engaged in this behavior. And that's another issue, because we have a tendency to generalize things where we should individualize things. We should be angry with those that are causing the injustice, and we should be angry with those that are perpetuating the injustice. But if you have neither caused nor perpetuated, we should not be angry with you. But the generalization comes directed at us all the time. I was listening to what you were saying, Steve, when you were talking about being beaten up every day, and my heart kind of went out to you. But then I realized that if my heart goes out to you and I pity you, then I'm doing to you what I don't want done to my students of color. My students of color don't have any room for pity. They have room for those who are strong enough to look at them and say, okay, this is the reality. Now what are we going to do? The so what, now what principle of life. There's a whole TED talk on it. It's fabulous. Yes, this is reality, but where are we going to go from here? How are you still going to be the person that you are meant to be? How are you still going to grow regardless of what society is trying to throw at you? And me looking at you and going, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, poor baby, which is some of the things that our children of color get all the time, is not going to give them the strength they need to continue to grow. Because ceilings are no longer glass. They are reinforced titanium. We know they're coming, and people don't care if we know they're coming. So when they sit in a classroom and they learn revisionist history, and they're supposed to embrace it as if it's going to help them change, and they want to work really hard, and they're working twice as hard to get half as much, we're basically, we as educators of color feel like we're misleading our children into believing that once they get that degree and they graduate, that life is going to be an even platform, and it's not. It's not. So we have to deal with keeping our children focused, keeping them engaged, keeping them excited about what they're learning and who they are. Because if they lose sight of who they are, they're not going to achieve anything, because once they get into the realities of society, it's going to hit them like a ton of bricks that society was never built for them.
Can I ask you 2 questions if the rest of the class doesn't mind? Is that okay if I ask her 2 fast questions maybe?
Yes, so when you ask that question, I'm going to let Janae take the floor after that.
Or somebody, yeah, but me, kind of her, because does your husband ever discuss with the family the Irish background? Do you know what I'm talking about? You know what I mean? Like, the Irish, when the Irish came here and it was like Irish need not apply, and there were a lot of Irish slaves, and there was a lot of Irish, there's a lot of Irish shit too that has gone on. So I didn't know if that was part of it. And then I don't really have ADD, but I'm way too hyper and I have way too many things going on in my head. So I forgot the second question. But other than that, I was just wondering, because you know how you really kind of have like a triple-ish whammy when you know how you were saying, yeah, you saw the looks on people's faces. The look on my face was the Irish part of it also. Like, so now I feel like maybe you might be carrying that. Do you carry that also? Okay, go ahead.
Which piece are you asking me if I carry?
Like him being Irish.
Uh-huh.
Did he ever discuss with you his Irish heritage in the background and the slavery of the Irish and the you know, when the Irish came to America looking for the American dream, and you know, Irish need not apply, you know, things like that, you know, the discrimination also. And I didn't know if like he ever discussed with you that. Plus he's a police officer, and he, you know, just so do you as a Black female woman carry all of this to try to educate and teach others and how you raised your children?
So he really was never comfortable with conversations about race relations. So he's my ex. Yeah, I carry everything that has to do with race relations in this family, but my family raised us that way because my parents were strong advocates. My aunt was dating Huey Newton when he started the Black Panther Party. My mom worked with Malcolm X. My parents started the first Black student union at SUNY New Paltz in the 60s. Like we've done so many things over the years. So my children kind of have absorbed the conversations that we've had as a family. Their dad, you know, I don't want to speak ill of him because that's just not appropriate, but you know, that's just never been a comfortable piece for him. So as time goes on, if they have conversations, I'm sure he would do fine with them, but he doesn't really embrace anything that has to do with race because in his family it was just super uncomfortable. And yes, there was so much that they could learn from, you know, the plight of the Irish immigrants when they came in, and the Italian immigrants, because the Italian immigrants went through this, you know, similar things as well. But there's so much to unpack for them because they've had a lot of experiences that other people haven't, because my boys look a very Middle Eastern, like they can kind of, they look like many different ethnicities. So there are times where my youngest will tell you that he had a lot of friends in high school and went over to their houses and enjoyed their hospitality and their fellowship. And then when dad came to pick them up, everything was cool and the parents were friendly and they had conversations. But when mommy came to pick them up or grandpa came to pick them up, then suddenly the friendships no longer existed. Now they were Black men in the eyes of those who didn't really realize it at first because they're biracial children. So that was a burden for my boys because they lost a lot of friends who they thought were different human beings than they actually turned out to be. And that's kind of another disgusting reality that we have here because, you know, do you start to misjudge everyone and not trust anything you thought you knew because people were so different until one of your, you know, somebody of color came to pick you up. So that's a problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Janae.
Janae, you got the floor, huh? Janae, you have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Going off of what a couple people have talked about comfortability, and I think in order for there to be any progress, we have to be okay with being uncomfortable to an extent. Like, if you're comfortable in your business, you're not gonna succeed because you're not gonna be willing to do the hard work. And I think America, for a very long time, we sat in like complacence, not we, but the people who are running the country allowed us to sit in a place of complacency and comfortability where racial issues were like brushed under the rug. And I think like off of like Rebecca's question, the first thing we can do is having conversations like this, like getting uncomfortable, talking about the elephant that is in the room, and being okay with talking to your family. And your family might not like the fact that you're like, you know what, white privilege is real, racism is real, but it's something that needs to be said in order for us to make a progressive step. I'm not going to say who I vote for or who I don't vote for, but I do want to say that voting is very important. There was a vote last week, and the president isn't always the person making the rules. It's the people at the Congress level, the people that are representing our towns, like the mayor and stuff like that. And these are all like extremely important people that are directly affecting our lives. And so I think it's very important that we're all voting, because if we're all showing up for conversations but we're not voting, in my opinion, that's taking 2 steps forward but another step backward, because it doesn't end at a conversation. You have to put it into action. And like Chris said, when he saw things he wanted to change and there wasn't someone to represent him, he ran for office and he ended up being a councilman. So we have to remember that we do have power. There's power in our words, power in having conversations with one another. And that we have to remember that there's people looking up to us. So like Kari said, she's trying to make a change so that people don't have to bury their kids. Like, I'm a mother and I've been going to protests twice weekly. I live in Ellenville now, well, Napanoch, but I go to the Ellenville protests. And earlier today, I was having conversations and we're trying to make changes to include a Black history lesson in the Ellenville curriculum. But it's sad because it was like Kari's mom came up in the conversation as one of the last people who was willing to teach the subject. And Kari's mom hasn't worked in Ellenville for years. So it's just, again, you have to be willing to have conversations is what it comes down to for me, uncomfortable conversations to figure out what the next progressive step is. I feel like I rambled, but.
No, it's okay. So it's okay, honey. I'd like to turn it over to Drew. I'd like to give you an opportunity to really comment on this. Right now, we're at the point of, I think we're kind of talking about not really solutions, but now we're starting to bridge the gap of understanding. Everybody spoke and they spoke about their experiences, and one of the questions that I think we're kind of leading into, or that we're kind of standing on the foundation of, is Rebecca. Rebecca questioned what exactly can she do, or what exactly can white people do, and I kind of want to get into the, kind of discussing solutions, kind of touching base on what we can do as individuals to kind of bridge that gap. So I like you.
I have this conversation kind of often, and when I do have it, it's hard because I hear from both sides. I hear one side saying, we don't know, we didn't create this mess. I hear one side saying, kind of disconnect themselves. I don't know, I'm not the one in power, you're in power, you guys figure this out. But I feel that one side can't figure it out with discussing it with the other side in terms of how we make that connection. How do we bridge this divide? How do we, being that some people are willing to have a conversation, white America is willing to have more than ever. Like now, I'm seeing this real willingness to, okay, let me understand what's going on. Like Steve was saying before, I had to run out and then I kind of ran home to reconnect. But like you were saying, you want to learn, you want to, and I respect people that come with a conviction. Men and women, we have something that we stand by, and I respect that. But I also respect that having this conversation and you open, I think, because sometimes it's a matter of who you have this conversation with. Because between Tamika and Martin, you guys started this whole thing. You allow people space to be who they are and to not be, that's, when you're pointing your finger and you're blaming people, it's hard no matter who you are. You have to defend yourself. So you're going to stand up. That's what people do. So to have a conversation where, okay, you got your point, but this is how your point affect an entire race. If you get that, cool. If you don't, maybe we need a little more talking. We need to massage this whole conversation, because I feel that our actions and words affect us all. So I think, long story short, this type of conversation really helps. Continuing the conversation, finding things that we can agree upon, legislation that we can change. Do we believe that men shouldn't, police officers shouldn't kill people no matter what crime they committed, just take it upon themselves to kill another man or person? Do we believe that's right or wrong? That's the answer. Like, right or wrong, regardless of a person's background, do we believe something? Do we believe that people should be treated unfairly, knowing that you wouldn't want to be treated like that? You wouldn't want your children should be treated like that, right or wrong? Do we believe in that? Yeah, certain things that we can believe on. Forget the race, forget the media, right or wrong. I'm a human being, you're a human being, I have a family, you have a family, I have grandchildren, I have children. Can we agree upon that? Okay, let's start voting, let's start changing some legislation. Do we believe that people need affordable housing, healthcare, and food, right? Economics, do we believe that it's right? I'm talking about poor, white, black, and brown. This is what I'm talking about. Things that we can agree upon. Forget the black and white. Let's focus what's right or wrong. So I feel that moving forward, it's about things we can agree upon. And I think all the basic needs of families and us as a community, and not in black and white, put that aside. Although we know how this whole place was created, let's start focusing on, I say truth. The truth is what's right and what's wrong. And to me, that's at least coming together on some type of bridge, some type of thing, something that we can agree upon. Forget Republican, forget Democrat, all of it's BS anyway. So, it's just something to create a divide. That we know this, but if we know this, why aren't we making any moves?
Thank you, Drew. Just so everybody is aware, before I forget, I'd like everybody that's on this Zoom. If you're okay with it, please go in the chat, share your email, share your numbers, because what I truly believe in outside of myself, outside of Tamika or any organizations, I think good people should always connect, and I think that we should always use each other as allies in whatever we decide to build. So I just wanted to tell you guys, please, if you can, just share whatever information that you'd like to share, emails, phone numbers, and put down exactly what organization that you're associated with and what is your title. That's very important. What I like to do is just also piggyback on that a little bit, Drew. I see, the thing is that I think it's very unfair, and this is not, I'm not saying anything negative as far as what your question is, Rebecca, but I think that when the question is posed, what can we do to fix this problem or fix a race relation problem? I'm of the mindset to think that if it took 10
Amen.
years to create an issue, I think it's insane to think that it's going to be fixed in a conversation or it's going to be fixed in 5 years. You know, it's possible. It's possible. But I think that we're talking about, if you're talking about slavery, and if you're talking about slavery as far as European slavery and the inception of America and stuff like that, we're talking about 450 plus years. But we got to remember that the enslavement of Africans started with the Moorish community, the Arabs and stuff like that. So, you know, so now you're talking about 700 plus years of
Yeah.
African people being enslaved.
Right.
You know, I say that to say this, is that this is, you know, this is the first step. And, you know, I think that if we did anything tonight to bridge the gap, I hope that we bridge the humanity gap, the humaneness of it all. You know, understanding that when you see a post or you see a comment or there's something said to you, it's not said from a place of my 44 years or another person's 20 or another person's 50 or 60. We're talking about generations of frustration that's been mounted into that one comment, that one post, you know, that one subject matter. So we just need, if there's anything that can be done initially, I think is that just compassion, just having compassion and being humane in how we actually tackle the situation. My father-in-law, he gave me, and my father-in-law also, Kari, he marched with Malcolm and Martin, and he was a Black Panther and a nation of Islamists, a very decorated man. And he said something which is really simple, but it makes so much sense, right? And he said that racism and white supremacy is just one of the spokes on a wheel that has many spokes that holds the wheel together, you know. And he said that to me last weekend, and it's stuck with me. We can't, you know, this is not something that we're going to be able to have one conversation and hit every single thing that needs to be done. But one thing I can say is that, and I can speak on behalf of our people, is that we don't have time. We don't have time to really do a generalization of trying to hit every single person that needs to be educated, or try to figure out with every single person, what can they do personally to help with the situation. The reality is that our children are dying. Our women are dying. Our fathers are dying. You know what I'm saying? And if we talk about on an economic standpoint, I think Drew mentioned that economically, we're dying. You know, socially, we're dying. So, you know, if there's an issue, think about it like this. If you have children, and if there's children in the house and something immediately happens, if there's an emergency situation that happens, I have no time to sit down with you and talk about what happened to the child, or why did the child fall, or what the child should have been doing, or no, I need to go and act. And one thing I can say about us as a society, and especially my people, we are too reactive. We need to be proactive. Hold on, let me just say this. The issue that I have, and it was mentioned before, that because, you know, there's good and bad things with social media, right? But because of social media and because of technology, we were able to witness something as tragic as George Floyd being murdered. Okay? And understand this, that it's not something that hit me home. Me visually seeing it is not something that hit me that hard. What hit me the hardest was him crying for his dead mother. That's what hit me. Because my worries growing up in the South Bronx has always been, God forbid something happened to me, what will happen to my mama? So I was able to relate to that. And I was able to feel that. And I'm telling you the truth, I had to turn it off because it almost drove me to tears. Okay? It chokes me up even talking about it now. That is our reality. So these conversations are needed. These conversations are welcomed. But the reality is that these conversations are not saving lives at this very moment. Action is what's going to be needed to save lives. And everybody getting their act together and just understanding that if we're coming to you and we're saying that we're being brutalized and we're saying that this is happening, I don't want to hear that you need statistics or you need the media or you need certain information to validate what I'm saying to you. Because that's a waste of my time. Because while I'm talking to you and putting the effort into making you understand my reality, there is somebody out there. There's a child that may need that conversation to save his life. My nephews, I have 40 nephews and nieces. Kari will tell you. I have 40 nieces and nephews out there that need my assistance, that need me to save their lives. I have 7 children. I have 1 black boy that's in here that I'm busy trying to teach him how to be a man and I'm very hard on him. But if I'm not hard on him and diligent for him to move the right way, for him to speak the right way, for him to be a man the right way, I may be sending my child to death. I may be painting something for him that I'm not going to be able to accept. So I'm just saying that as a collective, I just want us to really understand the gravity of the situation. We can continue to have these conversations, but we need everybody here to be proactive. We need everybody here to do their due diligence. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rebecca. Go ahead.
I finally remembered, and I don't know where I'm pointing to, and I forgot your name. It says K-Bones on here. I'm not sure what your name. Sorry, but I remembered what I was gonna say is because what I kind of wanna stop teaching the children I'm around is how to fight. I know it sounds stupid and everybody's looking at me going, yeah, okay, but you have no idea what I've gotten myself into. But my son is, he has many different needs, special needs, whatever. Okay, so very much so, and he's come home with black eyes, teeth missing at 5-6 years old. My nephew, when I go see him, I'm kind of like just walking the bridge, I'm fighting, I'm literally, and my son hears me being like, I can't believe that jackass just said that about him, walk about, and he's hearing me because my son was born deaf. He's not deaf anymore, thanks to, science and all that good stuff. So he's not deaf any longer. So he can hear me saying these things, but he does not understand what the person walking by him was saying. I do. I heard it, When I'm with my nephew, I hear other things. And then here's me standing up to somebody 6'6" and, whatever. And I'm just like, really, so like I get that, like, the lovely Irish scrappy do in me, and I don't care because I say, you know what, you could beat my ass, but you're not going to unhear what I just said to you. So you can't unhear it, it's like, but the point is, like, it's around these kids and I can't help it because they're the source of it. I mean, the assholes are the source of it, and the kids are getting the blunt end of the deal. So here's me, like, standing there going, F you, or whatever I'm saying to them because I'm so riled up that they're saying this to a kid and they're talking like this to these children that can't, that my son has no clue. And I love it, how to describe somebody. Mommy, she wears a ponytail like you, now that he can talk. And it's somebody that has a whole bunch of dreads and it's a ponytail like this thin red ponytail, and I love that about him. He does not see that. He doesn't understand it, maybe because he's different. Then you have my other, so basically, like, I don't know how to shut the hell up when it comes to being around my kid when these morons, I'm sorry, when these people are saying this and they're not morons, and that's the problem. They're really not. They're just being jerks. And you know what I'm saying? Like, so how do I, like, That's where I need to stop it.
Oh.
Like,
So let me just interject
I-
with that, and I'll give somebody else an opportunity also. Right now, anytime I step to a podium, anytime I talk to anybody, any work that I do or any energy that I put forward, I'm 44 years old again, and I say my whole motivation for doing what I do, I'm not doing it for me. I'm not doing it for me. My daughter that's right behind me right there, my other children that's upstairs and all over the place, I'm doing it for our children. It's not about me anymore. And my advice to you is, I don't think that anything that we do at this time is really about us. Let me tell you something. Life is short, and I know that we hear that all the time. Life is short, but 80 years is not a lot of time. 90 years is not a lot of time. 60 years is not a lot of time. So once you get to a certain point, you're trying to build a foundation for the next generation, whether it's financially, socially, spiritually, whatever the case may be. You're just trying to all we want to do as loving parents is we want to make sure that our children do not walk a path that we already walked. So, I applaud you. I applaud your passion when you hear negativity. Listen, as feisty as you need to be, just don't get yourself in trouble. But what I'm saying is that your passion is only mirroring what your heart is, right? And I think that's incredible to give to our children. But unfortunately, like we said, there's certain conversations that we have to prematurely have with our children. And if we have to have that conversation with our children so that our children, once they get to our situation or when we get to our age, they are moving in harmony and they're not having a conversation about bridging the gap, right? Then I think that we've succeeded. I think we've done our job.
So Rebecca, you are doing several things for your children when you get as angry as you get about the injustice that you feel is being imposed upon them, right? You want to raise confident, strong young men with character and integrity, right? So in doing so, you have to be as unapologetic about yourself as you possibly can be. You can't feel badly about the times where you stood up for what is correct and just, because then you will kind of make them feel as if they have to second guess it when they do it themselves, right? So in you standing up for them and for other things, for other people that you feel are unjust, you are role modeling for them the appropriate way in which to stand up for things that they feel are inappropriate, right?
it's the way I do it, I guess.
Okay, so but still, if it's the way that it flows from you and it's effective for you, then that's being unapologetically you. Things flow from all of us in different fashions, and we all have to find ways to make sure that our message comes across. I mean, if you feel that you're coming at it, out of the gate very, very heavy and you don't want to be as heavy, then, there are ways for you to determine how you want to express yourself and explain yourself, but don't apologize for standing up for anything that you feel comes at your children sideways. Because I'll tell you right now, I'm the first one to come for you if you come for my children.
You feel like a mama bear comes out of you, like a lunatic, right? Like a rabid mama bear, just like, and whether it's your nephew or any type of child that's around you,
Right.
Or is it me? I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
But that's who you're supposed to be.
Oh.
So you're being for them exactly who it is you're supposed to be, because if you don't do it, who's going to? If you don't teach them to be their own best advocates and to stand for justice and what is correct, you can't expect the world to do that for you. You have to do it. And it sounds like you're doing a pretty good job. I mean, you haven't hit anybody, right? So as long as you haven't attacked anybody, you're good to go. I mean, we have conversations.
Only once.
Well, did they deserve it? No, I'm only kidding. Okay, so
hell yeah.
So here's the thing.
Yes.
There are days where I go to work as an educator and I am cursed out black and blue by 8:30 in the morning, right? And it's not because people come to school and they're angry and they want to scream and yell and they want to represent their families like that. It's not that at all. Sometimes you have to say, okay, now I can't take this personally. I have to really stop and think, what is going on in this person's life? And you have to make them feel heard. If you make people feel heard, then there's sometimes you have the opportunity to kind of quell a disturbance before it becomes so escalated that you feel like you have to resort to something more physical than conversational. So when you start to feel that boil up in yourself, just try a couple of techniques if it bothers you. Now, it doesn't sound like it's not bothering me because you sound like you're doing what you need to do, but if it's bothering you, try to count. We have all kinds of things that we do with our munchkins. We tell them, okay, we got our red and our yellow and our green. You start on red. Okay, what's my next response? Okay, if we're on yellow, okay, am I going to do the right thing? Am I going to make the right choice? If you're on green, green is go. If you're not second guessing yourself and you're on green, go. Say what it is that you feel that you need to say, because in all honesty, you don't know that what you say may be a life-changing statement for someone who never looked at it that way. And you have some sort of a social responsibility to ensure that you're giving everyone the number of lenses that they can view the world on. To answer your question before, though, as to something that you can do since you do have children, and to anybody else that has children, one of the things that we're noticing in our Hudson Valley schools is the disproportionate rate that people of color are suspended from school. Okay, most of the school districts in the Hudson Valley are being cited for disproportionality. Okay, in that, if you're a parent that can get on a committee that discusses the school's code of conduct, try to get on those committees, because the code of conduct is weaponized against our children in many districts. I just had a screaming battle about that in my district. So you probably read about
can I join? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
But every school district has what's called a SAVE committee, SAVE legislation, and different committees based on the rules and regulations and the protocols that children and families are expected to follow when they're in school. Most of those codes of conduct do not allow for a change in disproportionality. They have situations where if a child skips one class, they're put in in-school suspension for 3 days. Absolutely not. There's no reason for that kind of a disconnect from what's going on in the classroom. That is reprehensible. That needs to be fought. To take a really strong look at the disproportionality numbers and the data in your district, see how many children of color are being suspended as opposed to their counterparts, and look at the code of conduct that the people are expected to follow, because you will see there are a lot of issues inherent in those things.
Unfortunately, my son goes to a school he goes to Abilities First. I don't know if you've heard of it. So it's all for children with disabilities. So there's no getting kicked out of there. I will be the one to get kicked out of there, but they want,
But Abilities.
But I'm wondering if the school district in which we live in, but like Highland, Poughkeepsie, Marlboro, like all of those, I wonder if that would be an option.
Abilities First is the school that your son attends, or what's your home school?
That's what I'm saying. So I live in Highland. His dad lives in Marlboro. Then there's also something that happened in Poughkeepsie. So I wonder if any one of those.
Right. Yeah. So but Ability First also functions under a code of conduct. So you have to make sure that.
I would like to attack never mind. I don't mean attack in that way, but
it doesn't. You don't sound like
attack that subject in a certain school.
No, don't listen. There are so many things in education that need to be attacked. That apologize for that. Don't even worry about that. But when you're dealing with a child with a disability, again, there's a disproportionate number of students of color that are classified. Because before I became an administrator, I was a board certified exceptional needs specialist. So my realm is birth through 21. And when you're looking at you have to look at the protocols for abilities first too, because you have to make sure that if your child is suspended, your child is not suspended for anything that's a manifestation of his disability. And that
Right.
happens too. So there's a
Right.
lot of things that you can still do as a parent to ensure that your child is protected and other children like them, because you have to be that voice, because your voice is strong, even though you keep apologizing for it. Your voice is strong. And you may be the voice for others who don't have that same strength in their voice or fear strength in their voice for whatever reason. You may say something that will change the outcome for another child just because you were that strength and somebody overheard you.
I want to change it for all the kids.
Well, then that's what you do. That's what it is.
So let me interject with you ladies real quick.
Sorry.
It's okay. Listen, we can go on all night, but I wanna give you guys an opportunity to have dinner, and I wanna just give you guys a moment to really process. There's a lot of information, and it was really powerful. It was a powerful conversation, at least I think so. I want to thank everybody for coming on. I know it was last minute, but in my opinion, and you guys just let me know, I think most of you guys have my phone number. You guys have me on Facebook. If this is a conversation that you guys would like to do again, or you would like to invite other, other people that potentially could have something positive to say, please, we welcome that. And we'd love to do that because, like I said, this is not a one conversation thing. It's not a one movement thing. It's not a one march thing. This is a lot of work that we got to get done. So I'm gonna close out like that. I tell you guys, I love you guys. Thank you so much for doing what you do. And I'm gonna see you guys again. All right.
Thank you, everybody, for participating. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate the content. And I know that with everybody's voice being heard, we'll be able to really make some changes. So it's very exciting stuff.